We will be recording today's session, and we'll be sure to send out the recording to all of you afterwards. Please make sure that you are on mute. We will have time at the end, hopefully. We have a lot to cover, but we hope that we'll have time at the end to take some of your questions. So at that time, you'll be able to unmute yourself. But throughout the session, please make sure you remain muted. I'm going to share my screen really quick and we'll jump right in. Can everybody see my screen? I'm going to take that as a yes. Okay. So today we are going to be sharing updates around housing and homelessness in Spartanburg County. We have a lot to cover in a little bit of time. So we're going to wait to the end to address as many questions as possible. So if you think of a question while we are sharing today, please throw it in the chat and we'll get to as many of those as possible. I will be kind of facilitating today's conversation, but I am joined by 3 others who will also be sharing throughout today's session. And again, my name is Hannah Jarrett, and I am Director of Economic Mobility with United Way of the Piedmont. I'm joined by Eric Chatham with Civitas, Mitch Kennedy with the City of Spartanburg, and Beth Rutherford with SPIN. And we're excited to have you all here and to share a lot of exciting updates about housing and homelessness in Spartanburg County, particularly related to our Opportunity Housing Collaborative and our Homeless Task Force. So we're going to start with just a little bit of context. At United Way of the Piedmont, we have established economic mobility bold goals for our community, with the main goal being to decrease the number of individuals living below self-sufficiency by 11,000 or 10% by the year 2030. And that's a pretty big, audacious goal, in my opinion. We have identified 2 additional goals that we feel are critical to achieving this bold self-sufficiency goal. One is related to employment of those who are living in poverty, so a goal to increase incomes in our community. And the other is a housing affordability goal, which is a lot of what we're going to be sharing with you today are the strategies that we are addressing or implementing in our community to achieve this goal, to decrease the number of cost-burdened, low-income households by 6,000 or 10% over the next 10 years. So that is a goal to make sure that people in our community are living in housing that they can afford, particularly those who are living on a lower income and have limited resources, because the less that they're spending on housing means that there's more money that they have each month to afford other basic needs like healthcare, childcare, transportation, food. The more money someone has tied up in housing, the less they have to afford those other basic needs, which just creates a domino effect for a lot of households. That just means that they're constantly struggling or unable to make ends meet on a regular basis. So what we're sharing with you today about the Opportunity Housing Collaborative and the Homeless Task Force will include a lot of the strategies we are implementing to achieve that part of our goal. When we talk about housing and homelessness, we're talking about it on a spectrum. We don't want to create a situation where we're so narrowly focused on one aspect of the housing spectrum that we just end up creating challenges and issues in another part of the housing spectrum, because everything is so connected and intertwined. The whole spectrum needs to be healthy and meeting the needs of our community. So whether that's having adequate shelter for those who are living on the street to move in to a safe environment, then to move out of shelter, to exit shelter into more permanent housing options like transitional housing, to have adequate vouchers and subsidies for housing for people who can't quite afford housing in our community and they just need a little additional help each month to make sure that that basic need is met. Making sure that we have affordable rental in our community, and not just affordable, quality is so important to this conversation as well. We know that 50% of renters are living in housing they cannot afford, which again, this creates a domino effect and creates situations where people are constantly struggling or unable to afford their other needs. And it's also a situation where they're not living the best quality life that they can, and they're constantly having to make tough decisions between things like housing and utilities and food. We also want to make sure that we have assistance available in our community to help prevent housing issues from occurring, such as eviction or homelessness. If you think about circumstances like a global pandemic, which we're currently in, making sure that we have the resources to help people in those moments of unexpected need and crisis to, again, prevent longer term challenges for that family as well as our community overall related to homelessness and eviction. And then, of course, market rate housing is important to this as well. While we are more focused on the affordability and the homeless services, we certainly want to make sure that people have the opportunity to move across this spectrum of housing as they are able to, as they become economically mobile, so that they free up other parts of the housing spectrum for others who need that opportunity. So again, it's all connected and tied together. We want to have that comprehensive look. So the two main strategies and groups that United Way of the Piedmont convenes to address these issues of housing and homelessness, again, looking at this full spectrum, are the Opportunity Housing Collaborative and the Homeless Task Force. We're going to start with sharing some information about the Opportunity Housing Collaborative and some exciting updates from that group. So the Opportunity Housing Collaborative is a group of diverse community stakeholders who all focus or have expertise or passion or mission related to housing in Spartanburg County, who have all agreed to come together to address housing challenges collaboratively and collectively. We know that there's not one single organization or person in Spartanburg County who has all of the resources or expertise to address all of the big complex challenges related to housing. So it's going to take a collaborative effort in order to, live in the community that we want to live in, where everyone has a quality, affordable place to live and therefore thrive. So it's a diverse group of partners around the table. Some of them are listed here on the screen. You can see that it's everything from nonprofit organizations to government entities, developers, financial institutions. Because again, it's going to take all of the different partners coming together to really address the complex challenges related to housing. Over the past year, the Opportunity Housing Collaborative has been going through an action planning process, and we're going to be spending the bulk of our time when we're talking about housing sharing a sneak peek of the action plan. So we were awarded a grant by the Mary Black Foundation to hire Civitas to help facilitate the action planning process among all the partners over the past year. The action planning process has included 3 phases, which are listed here on the screen. We've already completed the first 2, and the third one will be completed here shortly. So we first started off with really trying to understand what's currently available in our community when it comes to housing and housing services, and then where are the gaps. From there, we went through the process to identify what strategies we can implement in our community to address those gaps, and what the roles of the different partners would be to actually implement them. So we don't want this to be just a report that sits on a shelf and gathers dust. We want it to be a working document that we are all using to achieve our shared vision and implement our collaborative efforts. So I'm going to turn it over to Eric to share some updates about the action plan. This is a sneak peek. The action plan won't be finalized until the end of September. So this is very new information that we're excited to share with all of you, and we'll certainly continue to share over the next few months. But Eric, I'll turn it over to you to share a little bit more about the action plan and the process.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Hannah. Again, my name is Eric Chatham with Civitas. So our action plan has, as Hannah said, has been being sort of in development for quite some time now, but I feel like just here in the last month or so, we've been able to finalize the goals and the outcome metrics that will be tracking and reporting in this online reporting system moving forward. So over the last couple of months, we have formalized the collaborative. We've established several committees. Currently, there are 5 committees. Those, as Hannah said, this will be a work in progress ongoing. So maybe those committees change their focus. Maybe committees are removed or added throughout. But initially, we have established 5 committees. Our first one is the Coordination and Operations Committee. This is going to be the committee that keeps us all organized and keeps all the members engaged in working in this collaborative effort. And one of the first items that's been identified for that committee and really the collaborative as a whole is to identify full-time staff to help guide and facilitate this process. And again, continue to coordinate all of those members that Hannah was mentioning earlier. So there will be eventually there will be full-time dedicated staff to this effort, which will obviously be necessary to advance these goals, keep everybody on track and manage all of the events that'll be happening, the meetings, the coordination, managing websites, etc. Eventually the Opportunity Housing Collaborative will host monthly meetings. And that full-time staff person would be facilitating these meetings. The idea of the meetings will be really 2 things. Number one, there'll be some sort of training aspect or information sharing, at least, aspect of each meeting. One of the main goals of the collaborative as a whole is to just make sure that all of the partners and across these sectors in the housing spectrum, if you will, are all aware of various programs and funding and who's doing what in our community, where to make referrals, who to contact, hopefully generate and stimulate some joint venture type projects. Already we can see in some of our meetings, just people making connections with other agencies, developers, service providers, etc. And they're finding connections that'll be really helpful. For example, we've got several organizations that focus on minority populations, especially the Hispanic population in the area. And we're seeing connections where some service providers need help and could use translation services at a minimum, but also just for help engaging those members of our community, and developers, property managers, etc. Also could benefit from that type of assistance. So the Coordination Operations Committee, again, the main goal currently is to get full-time staff so we can have somebody keeping us moving forward. Second committee will be the Community Outreach and Equity Committee. As I was just mentioning, one of the main goals here is to make sure we have inclusive engagement, inclusive opportunities for everyone in the Spartanburg area, and certainly making sure we're first have all the right service providers at the table, and as members of the Opportunity Housing Collaborative will be important there. The third committee will be the Housing Development Committee. This is primarily made up of developers, both for-profit and nonprofit, large and small, that are working in the Spartanburg area. We hope that what we'll identify here is, as I mentioned earlier, some joint venture opportunities where perhaps there are smaller projects that some of our local nonprofits might be interested in, but need some help, not quite have the capacity to do the development. So larger developers might be able to help and develop smaller projects, and vice versa. Some of our service providers might be great joint venture partners on development projects to maintain that equity for all the members in our community. And then another big aspect I see from the development committee is a lot of our funding comes from the state housing finance. Then the state housing finance sets the terms and the conditions and the priorities for the programs at the state level. And I'm not sure that they're always in alignment with what we want to see here in the Spartanburg region. And I live down in Charleston, and I can assure you they're not always in alignment with what they want down in Charleston. So one of the big ideas we have is just that this Opportunity Housing Collaborative, as a representative entity for the Spartanburg and in the upstate as well, will provide feedback to state housing and influence, hopefully influence their decision-making and funding priorities, so that it aligns with what we want to see here in our community. I think that's a huge goal. In my opinion, that's a huge goal for the Opportunity Housing Collaborative, to have sort of one voice that we've all bought into and we've all agreed to, in having everybody sign on to responses and comments to state agencies about how they provide funding in our community. The fourth committee is the Funding Opportunities and Mechanisms Committee. This is made up of several of our lending institutions, both for-profit and nonprofit, as well as some of our grant-making organizations. Again, here the idea being that we make sure that all of the partners in the Opportunity Housing Collaborative are, number one, aware of funding sources and funding opportunities, both locally, state level, and in some cases, regional and federal funding sources, but also to make sure that everybody is, as a group, somebody is accessing these funding. I pointed out recently that State Housing Finance had funds available this spring for small affordable housing projects, and there was a set aside pool for nonprofit affordable housing developers, and it had so few applications that the application process itself was not competitive. They had more funding than they had requests. And I know no one ever hears that, but that's happened 2 years in a row from State Housing Finance. So we want to make sure that organizations are aware of that in our community. And so that I'm sure that they've said, well, that's always too hard, it's hyper competitive, so they don't take advantage. We want to make sure that everybody's aware of these kind of nuances and set asides, et cetera, so that we are able to always access as much funding as possible for our community. So that funding opportunities and mechanisms committee will really help with that. And also, as the city, the housing authority, and the county look to provide funding through their HUD funded sources, making sure that we're working together to again provide funding in the right method and mechanism. And finally, our fifth committee is the Supportive Services Committee. And as the Opportunity Housing Collaborative is trying not to just be all about strictly the housing, the physical housing piece of the spectrum, but also providing supportive services from homelessness to home ownership. And so having the supportive service agencies involved in these decisions and conversations and projects will really be vital to our success as a collaborative. So for each of those 5 committees, we've established some short-term and long-term goals with outcome measures and benchmarks that we'll be reporting through this online reporting mechanism, or through our dashboard, if you will, and then reporting back to the collaborative as a whole each month on those progress. Initially, we've elected an organization at least to be the chair of each of those committees, and they'll work with that full-time staff member to keep us coordinated and keep us on track for meeting those goals and benchmarks. And with that, I'll take a pause and maybe turn it back over to Hannah for any further comments.
Yeah, thank you so much, Eric. We appreciate you throughout this whole process, really facilitating this work with all of the different partners of the Opportunity Housing Collaborative. At this time, if you have questions related to what Eric just shared or the Opportunity Housing Collaborative, please put them in the chat. And we'll make sure, we still want to make sure we have plenty of time to talk about the work that we're doing in the area of homelessness, and then we'll get to all the questions at the end. But again, thank you, Eric, for being here with us this morning, and thank you for sharing. The last thing that I'll just say is that we at United Way of the Piedmont talk a lot and really value collaboration and collective impact. And this group of stakeholders has really been, I think, very inspiring to see how all of these different partners are working together and identifying, what each group or organization brings to the table and how that might be able to support another organization towards this greater vision and plan for our community. So I think we should all be proud of living in a place like this where collaboration seems to come so naturally, and everybody's kind of bought into that, because I've maybe noticed, observed, and heard about other communities where that is not the case. So I think that that's definitely something that we should celebrate, even as an early win in all of this. From day one, when we started bringing this group together, everybody was, committed to the idea of collaboration and partnership. So I am now going to switch gears a little bit. Again, put your questions in the chat. We'll get to them at the end. We're going to switch gears a little bit to talk about the homeless side of this spectrum. While we know that achieving the goals of the Opportunity Housing Collaborative will certainly have a very positive and beneficial impact on our homeless population, because it will open up more opportunities for them to exit out of homelessness, or even prevent homelessness from happening in the first place. We know that people who are experiencing homelessness here in our community have very unique needs. They face a lot of challenges and barriers. And so we want to make sure that we have the services and the access and the opportunities available to meet the specific needs of that population. So we have been at United Way of the Piedmont convening a homeless task force over the past several years. It is also a pretty diverse group of different stakeholders from various sectors in our community, from government entities, nonprofit, homeless service providers, businesses. The organizations listed here on the screen are the organizations that have entered into a formal memorandum of understanding as the lead entities of the homeless task force. And that occurred about 2 years ago. So that's City of Spartanburg, One Spartanburg, SPIN, and United Way of the Piedmont. And like I said, it's a much larger group than that. However, these organizations have committed to making sure that we address issues related to homelessness, that we're constantly striving to achieve the goals and objectives that we've identified as a task force, and to really make sure that we are, holding ourselves accountable to that vision. So Beth and Mitch will be joining me and sharing a few updates about what the task force has been up to over the past, year or two. And then again, if you have questions, throw them in the chat. But I'm going to start off just by sharing a few data points. One of the major questions that we always get when it comes to homelessness is, how much of an issue is it really in our community? I think depending on your background, where you come from, you might view the homeless population in Spartanburg as not a lot, maybe because you've come from an area where it seems a lot more. Or you might look around and go, why do we have so many homeless individuals? So here is the most recent data we have for Spartanburg County. So this is on the far right side is the 2020 data, but you can also see the trends back to 2017. The blue bar is point in time data. So that is individuals who were counted as homeless during the last week of January of each of those years. So you can see that we've remained fairly steady in the number of homeless that we've counted year over year on that last week of January. The orange bar is the number of people who entered shelter in Spartanburg County during that full calendar year. So it's a much broader representation, and again, remained fairly somewhat steady over the past few years, but we are seeing a slight decrease. And again, this is specifically the orange bar, specifically those who are in shelter in that calendar year. Big question that we always get are, where are all the homeless people coming from? And again, this is 2020 data on the far right hand side, going back though to 2017. The majority of people who are experiencing homelessness in Spartanburg County who have entered into shelter, their last permanent address was in South Carolina, and specifically the upstate of South Carolina. So the majority of homeless that we have here in our community were formerly our neighbors, at least regionally here in the upstate. So where are they coming from when they enter shelter here in Spartanburg County? Where were they previously? The majority, which is that blue bar or that blue part of the bar, are coming from a homeless situation, meaning that they are coming from a situation where they were living in a place not meant for human habitation. And then the gray bar, which is the second highest, means that the individuals are entering shelter from a non-homeless situation. So they were in some way housed prior to moving in to the shelter. But the people entering shelter from a homeless situation has increased year over year. So when people leave shelter in Spartanburg County, where are they going? Is it a positive destination? Is it negative? Unfortunately, we don't know for a lot of the people who leave shelter. Once they leave the shelter, we are not able to keep up with them. So we don't have any information about where they went and are they better off. However, for those that we do know, did they lead to a positive or a negative destination? You can see here the gray bar at the top. In 2020, 88% of the people exiting shelter exited to a positive destination. So that's certainly something that we can celebrate. At the bottom, you'll see the blue line is people who exited shelter into an institutional destination, so maybe like a nursing home. And then the orange bar is to a negative destination. So 5% exited or 7% exited to a negative destination, perhaps back on to the street or a place not meant for human habitation. So I think that this is something to celebrate in our community, knowing that the services that we do have oftentimes lead to positive outcomes. And as a homeless task force, we want to make sure that this continues to be the case, that more people have this opportunity to exit into positive permanent housing options so that homelessness is brief, rare, and non-reoccurring in our community. So I'm gonna ask Beth to join me now to share a couple of things that the task force has done over the past couple of years to implement some strategies to connect people to the services that we do have available here in Spartanburg County. So Beth, I'm going to turn it over to you to share about the Spartanburg Opportunity Center and our outreach efforts. And Beth, you might be muted.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, there is an echo. You might need to mute your computer and leave your phone unmuted. Okay, we still can't hear you. Did you unmute your phone?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's good.
Okay. I just turned off my phone. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So one of the programs that developed out of the Homeless Task Force and is now a program under SPIN is the Spartanburg Opportunity Center. We opened up 2 years ago providing just basic services, shower, laundry services, clothing to those in need, particularly to those living on the streets. About a year ago, we expanded our space due to the thank you to the city. And now we have access to computers, we have a media classroom, we have 3 case managers' offices, we have agencies coming in once a week. If your agency would like to come in, we would love to partner with you. We have a health clinic, we have a laundry room, we provide showers and food. And most importantly is that case management aspect. And so these are for the people living on the streets. We're open 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 to 11, and then we close down so our beneficiaries can go to the soup kitchen, and we open back up from 1 to 3:30. And we are working on plans to expand those times. Um, when we first started, the very first day, we only had 3 people come to the center, but we knew it was going to be small. Last December, we averaged about 45 people coming to the center. Right now, we're averaging between 90 to 100 people who are coming in the morning and about 50 coming into the afternoon. And what we feel that is really the reason that our numbers are growing, I would say it's not that the number of homeless are growing in Spartanburg, but it's the number of homeless that are now seeing the benefits of a place to go, of showers, but most importantly, case management. We probably in the last 3 weeks have housed 4 homeless, chronic homeless people. And when I say chronic homeless, that's people who have been homeless for more than a year in the last 3 years. So these are the efforts that we are using on this with the homeless population. We are starting to see that they are seeing an avenue to get out of the situation that they came into. Again, this was developed through the task force and all the partners. We're actually United Way is on the other side of our building, which makes that nice. A lot of collaboration there. But the the biggest issue that we see with the homeless population is, and this is across the board, is that lack of affordable housing as well as 1-bedroom units, which is very difficult to come by. We do have preventive measures that we can help with deposits to help these individuals or couples get into housing, which is what we would like. And then what's really interesting is that even though our beneficiaries get housed, they still come back to the center. And that is for that continued case management, which we find is obviously the key to success. Getting to know the homeless population, there's a lot of different reasons that they're homeless, and it's not all the ones that you would think, not that stereotype. But the Opportunity Center is always looking to expand. And again, if you'd like to partner with us, we'd love to have your services come in. Some of the partners on the task force are already coming in. Another program that developed out of the task force and is a program under the SPIN in direct partnership with the city is that our intake coordinator, Olivia McIntyre, who for years has been out on the streets just with her own ministry working with the homeless, was hired by the city to provide that outreach. So she is the liaison between the homeless and law enforcement, between the homeless and the community. One of the things that we see a lot, and I'm sure you all see, is that there are a lot of people that will just go by to the homeless population and feed them dinner or give them money. And it's not really a sustainable avenue. And so what Olivia tries to do is to educate those compassionate people. We don't want to do that, but say, come to the center, bring your stuff to the center so that we can help with that. And so that is one of the things that Olivia does. She goes out about 20 hours per week, all different times of the day and night, to work with our homeless population, and is there to assist if there is any type of need. She works very closely with law enforcement. All of these efforts are to help those in the community as well as help our community, because we want to be a strong and vibrant community. And when you drive around and you see what you think may be a homeless person, we don't want that negative aspect. Unfortunately, homelessness is real here in Spartanburg. We do see quite a high population. When I look at those point in time count numbers, it always upsets me. When you think 2020 only had 166 homeless people, well, we know there's more than that. And so what I caution people is to remember that those are HUD numbers, and HUD's definition of homelessness is probably not what your or my definition of homelessness is. Um, but please do know that there are agencies that all of us are working to curb this situation. And I appreciate the efforts of all of you agencies that help out with this. And we just keep trying to provide more programs. We'd like to be that one-stop shop, that variety of wraparound services for the homeless.
Thank you so much, Beth. If anyone has questions for anything that Beth just shared, please put them in the chat. But I'm going to now turn it over to Mitch to share about a couple of other efforts, which are examples of what the Homeless Task Force has achieved. One is our Litter Heroes pilot program, and the other being Homeless Court. So Mitch, I'm turning it over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Wake up, wake up, wake up. So let me first say this, that, and Hannah noted earlier, talking about partnership and collaboration. So I've been with the city since 2005. And this conversation that we're having today is much different than the conversation that we're having back in 2005. And it's due to the spirit of collaboration and partnership that is happening in our community today. And I do want to give kudos to the United Way for their ability to convene and facilitate this discussion as it relates to opportunity housing. And the discussion that we're having about affordable housing is a huge contrast from where it used to be. It used to be just a default button, a conversation that took place between the city and the housing authority. And there's a much broader group of constituents that are at the table. What we're doing around homelessness is quite impressive. And when I think about where we were just 2-3 years ago, as it relates to this conversation. From a city's perspective, the person that was leading our efforts around homelessness was Lieutenant Lee Raines, who's a police officer downtown. We've clearly expanded our approach and our services today, and it's due to our opportunity to partner with organizations like United Way, SPIN, Hope Ministries, and so many others. So I want to just concisely try to share 2 programs that we have going today as regards to homeless. First is the Heroes program. The city and the county both were in the midst of a challenge regarding dealing with litter. The Department of Corrections restricted the use of individuals that were housed in the Department of Corrections. The program was previously called the inmate program. I don't like that term, so I don't refer to it as the inmate program. That's the last time I will use it. We will, when they lift those restrictions, the city plans to revise its approach to a reentry program to those that are within the Department of Corrections. But right now, we don't have access to those individuals that are seeking to reenter our program through some type of workforce component. In the absence of that program, we were having some challenges with litter. We were hiring using temp services, not certain of what the county's efforts. So we got innovative. So we sat down. It was One Spartanburg, the city, the county, SPIN, SC Works, Miracle Hill. I think I know that Hope Ministries, and Hannah, if I missed anyone, please jump in. I think those were the major partners, and the United Way, of course, to talk about how we could create this effort, utilizing SPIN as an intake as far as identifying, recruiting, and engaging individuals that were experiencing homeless to involve them and engage them in a workforce effort. So they are recruited and engaged through the outreach program and through SPIN and through Miracle Hill as potential participants in this program. They are processed just like a regular employee. They go through the same intake phase that an employee for the city or SPIN would go through. And they're identified as potential employees. They are interviewed and go through that, and they commit, in addition to working, commit to participating in case management that takes place weekly, and they're working about 20 to 30 hours a week. I view this program as just the beginning of how we can create a comprehensive workforce development effort for individuals that are experiencing homelessness in our program. The city is already considering how we can utilize these individuals during our leaf season in the fall, when we experience an increase in the demand in our public works department. So I'm very hopeful for this, and I so far have viewed this effort as a success. And again, I want to thank all the many partners that make it possible. Miracle Hill, who houses these individuals, the funders, the transportation, the meals that are provided. But kudos to SPIN for their efforts in leading it. Next, I know we can have questions about this. Next, I want to try to cover quickly as I can homeless court. And Judge Erica McGimpsey is the champion behind this. She's the municipal judge for the city. She championed this cause, and we're so grateful for her leadership. So homeless court is a voluntary program and is built upon the partnership between the court, prosecutor and defense attorney, service providers like SPIN and others, and the participant, providing access to justice that will build a stronger community for all of us. Homeless court strives to build upon a continuum of services with the goal of each participant becoming self-sufficient. Through service providers, they will address root causes of homelessness as well as barriers to prevent them from reaching their full potential. So it's not just about mitigating the criminal activity, but how can we better improve their lives? There's no special treatment for these individuals, which means if a person in homelessness in the program commits a crime, they're treated just like anyone else. Officers can use their discretion. And how individuals access homeless court, they primarily through the service providers who deal with homeless citizens on a daily basis. The service providers are crucial to the role in the success of homeless courts. The individuals must be homeless, previously homeless, or at risk of homelessness. They must show that they are receiving treatment or have received treatment and are transitioning out of a homeless lifestyle. The solicitor's office has sole discretion to admit or deny any participant. The solicitor office coordinates the docket with the court. Potential participants will complete an application in most instances, assistance of treatment or assistance with a service provider. The service provider establishes the criteria and the goals that have to be achieved with the participant. Court is held monthly. The application process is step one. It's sent to the solicitor and the court for a referral source. The court will search and see if the applicant has pending charges, convictions, bench warrants, etc. Step three, the solicitor reviews the application for acceptance or rejection. If accepted, defense counsel and service providers are notified. Step four, set a court date where the participant, defense counsel, service providers are introduced to the court, and the provider provides background, goals, etc. The participant's continuous treatment plan in the court receives updates upon completion of goals, treatment. Notice is given of a graduation date. So again, Hannah, correct me, I think that this is the first homeless court in the upstate, maybe in South Carolina. I'm not.
Yes, the first homeless court in the upstate. I believe there's one in Columbia and one in Charleston. So yes, that's something, of course, we can be proud of, to be the first in the upstate.
So again, partnership and collaboration at its best. Kudos to our community for making these two very important programs possible to these individuals that are experiencing homelessness. Meeting people where they are, to me, is the intentional efforts behind this. And so again, appreciative of all the partners that make it possible.
Thank you, Mitch. I mean, again, I hope that everybody, has heard these examples of collaboration and partnership in action to create a better community. A lot of what has been accomplished, of course, is new. So like what Mitch and Beth, these are new services, new pilot programs, but it's existing on an infrastructure of existing resources of work that was already being done, organizations that have been committed to helping individuals living in homelessness for a long time. A lot of the new element is just creating these partnerships to be able to try new things, be innovative, expand resources, leverage additional resources. And we're looking forward to continuing that moving forward. So the Homeless Task Force, what's next for that group? That group is also currently going through an action planning, a strategic planning process. We have been working towards shared objectives over the past few years, and this is the outcome of that work. But now we're like, well, what's next? What do we want to accomplish the next 5 to 10 years to make sure that we're continuing towards that mission of making homelessness brief, rare, and non-reoccurring in our community. We're in the early stages of the homeless task force strategic planning process. So don't have too much details to share with you about that right now, but it is something that we're working on and that we will continue to update you. I do want to share just one quick success story to end before we open it up for questions that kind of ties everything together. So it was actually one of the men who is part of the Litter Hero pilot program. He was, of course, hired on into that program as part of the litter crew, and he was, of course, is engaged in case management with one of United Way's community resource coordinators. And just in these first, 40-ish days of the program, he has gone from living on the street to now he is permanently housed in our community. So that just happened within 40 days, which is a huge success. And we're very excited. The other people in the program, some of them were working on transportation related challenges and looking at other housing opportunities. But I think that just goes to show how if we all come together, if we design opportunities and programs to really, like Mitch said, meet people where they're at and to comprehensively address their challenges through employment opportunities, housing opportunities, but of course, case management to help people navigate different services and opportunities in our community, we will certainly have a better community overall. And that's what all of this work is about. So I'll stop here. We can now take questions. If you have a question, you're welcome to unmute and speak, and we can discuss that. I'll also check the chat as well. But if you have a question, feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask, or you can put it in the chat if you're more comfortable with that.
Hey, good morning, Hannah.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I unmuted, but it doesn't seem to be letting me through.
Karen, we can hear you. If you want to type it in the chat, you can, but we can hear you. Well, now we can't. We could. I'm not sure.
Good morning, Hannah. Can you hear me?
Now I can, yes.
Okay. Hi, this is Karen Bingham. I actually work in the healthcare industry, and I know that a lot of homeless situations are intertwined, not necessarily caused by, but intertwined with both mental illness and, health issues. And so I'm wondering at the Opportunity Center, do we have any resources around either one of those? And, like what does that look like?
Beth, do you want to take that question about, I know that about the clinic as well as work we're doing in partnership with the emergency department?
Yes. So we just opened up a health clinic about a month ago. We do have a retired nurse, and basically she's doing a lot of, foot and wound care, carotid artery checks, blood pressure checks, glucose checks. We do see a lot of mental health issues, and we're working to get counseling into the center. Our nurse has been able to work with some of the beneficiaries and find out that they do have health issues. High blood pressure is a lot, and she's working on corrective eating, which is hard to do when you're living on the streets. But our plan is to expand that health clinic. And we are working with other like VCOM and St. Luke's to help relieve the pressures off of them, as well as the emergency room.
Okay, what about, do they have the ability with the Opportunity Center to have a mailing address? Because I know, and I work in a lot of assistance medications, and I know that you have to have an address to take advantage of a lot of the opportunities that are out there for free medications and counseling and different services. So do they have the ability to have a mailing address?
Yes, they actually use the address for the SPIN office, which is not at the Opportunity Center. Since we're not open 5 days a week, we don't feel, we're not there on Tuesdays and Thursdays to get the mail. So they can use the SPIN address, and we get quite a lot of mail here.
Okay,
But they
okay,
do have an address. Yeah,
okay, great. Thank you.
no problem. Thank you.
And I know that Olivia, the outreach person who does a lot of the street outreach as well as the intake at the Opportunity Center, has been working to develop more streamlined partnership and communication with the emergency department staff at Spartanburg Regional, where a lot of homeless individuals go for medical care, just to make sure that, again, we're taking that comprehensive approach and connecting people to additional services and resources that they might need beyond their medical care. So that's also been a positive related to the health. I see that there was a question about, will there be assistance to help those with an incarceration record to be eligible for rental housing? I'm assuming that you're referring directly to the Opportunity Housing Collaborative Plan. I don't know if any of the other speakers today want to jump in, but I'll just say that the plan that we've identified, that Eric shared kind of that sneak peek of, is fairly broad. However, we do have an emphasis on being inclusive to everyone in our community, regardless of their origin or their background. So while we haven't identified a specific strategy regarding incarceration into rental housing at this time, that is certainly something that through the different committees that we have established, would certainly be something that we would look into as a strategy for a specific population. But does anybody else want to jump in on that one? All right. Are there any other questions from
Hannah? This is Maria.
Hi, Maria.
Sorry, I'm gonna have a question. Even though I'm a United Way of the Piedmont person, I come to these and I always am like, oh my goodness, I had no idea. Olivia, Beth, you mentioned that she's out, 20 hours a week. And maybe this is my misunderstanding, but is there any chance, I know, Beth, you've done a wonderful job coming to our church and talking about SPIN before, but is there any chance that she'll be coming to large groups like that and sharing, because I think people, to your point, they're compassionate people out there, and maybe there's just a little more need of education on what's the best thing that you can do for folks that are holding up a sign saying, help me, I'm homeless.
Right. So yes, Olivia is always happy to come out and speak and talk about that. One of the things she commented on recently was, and this is what I talk about, compassion. There was a group that was handing out backpacks with school supplies to the homeless people living on the streets. And they were, they didn't need the school supplies. So Olivia, that's part of it. She wants to educate people. So yes, if anyone is interested, you can just contact me. I can put my number and email in the chat. And then we can go ahead and get that set up. But yes, she is more than welcome to come speak.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
It looks like we have one final question from the chat. For individuals living in a hotel with children, which is not a sustainable or affordable situation, What are some immediate resources for those families? And where do you refer homeless individuals that people might encounter in our community? So I definitely want input from Beth and others on this, but I'll just say that we get a lot of calls at United Way of the Piedmont from individuals who are experiencing homelessness. I think, one of the best resources that you can share, and one that we often share, is about the Spartanburg Opportunity Center. That is designed to be that one-stop shop to help people connect to a variety of services to address their situation, both in the immediate and the long term. I think 211 is also a really good resource to be able to share with people. That is a free information and referral line. People can call, share a little bit about their situation, where they live, and then learn about and be referred to organizations that exist within the local community to help address those specific needs. So I would say those are two really good resources to always kind of have in your back pocket to share with individuals. Beth, is there anything else, or any Mitch or Eric, that you would share related to that? And Beth, it looks like you're talking. Yeah, there you go. Unmute.
Yes, my go-to really is always 211. SPIN does have prevention services. The Haven provides prevention services as well. But I think really the go-to has always been 211 for that.
Thank you. Well, it looks like that's all the questions, and that's all of our time as well. So thank you all so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate it. If you have any questions or want more information, don't hesitate to reach out to us. I know that we'll be sending out a recording of this conversation, this Coffee and Conversations in follow-up, but please let us know if you would like to learn more. And thank you all so much. Y'all have a great rest of your week.